I never imagined that a single college party would change my life forever. My name is Leah, and it all started one ordinary evening when a friend invited me to a party. I wasn't particularly excited about going, but I decided to tag along. The party was lively, filled with the typical college crowd, laughter, and music. Amidst the noise, I spotted Curtis. He was standing by the drinks table, looking slightly out of place, just like me. We exchanged glances a few times before he finally made his way over to me. "Not your scene either?" he asked with a warm smile. We started talking, and before I knew it, we were deep in conversation, completely forgetting about the party around us. There was something about the Curtis that drew me in, his kindness, his gentle nature. From that night on, we started hanging out more often, going on outings, grabbing meals together. What began as casual encounters soon turned into something more. Curtis made the first move, confessing that he had feelings for me, and to my surprise, I realized I felt the same way. We started dating, and life felt perfect. However, perfection is often fleeting. Just as I was getting comfortable in my relationship with Curtis, strange things began to happen. It started small. Tiny annoyances that I could easily brush off. Trash appeared in my mailbox, strange bits of paper and wrappers that I hadn't put there. At first, I thought it was just someone's mistake, but then the phone calls began. At first, I didn't think much of them. The phone would ring, and when I picked up, the line would go dead. No one would speak. It happened a few times a week, then it became a daily occurrence. The calls came at all hours, sometimes waking me up in the middle of the night. I told Curtis about it, hoping he could offer some explanation or comfort. He suggested I change my phone number, which I did, but the calls didn't stop. They continued on my new number, making me feel like I was being watched, targeted. The stress began to wear on me. My once peaceful life was turning into a nightmare, and the constant anxiety was affecting my relationship with Curtis. I tried to hide it from him, not wanting to burden him with my fears, but he noticed the change in me. I wasn't the carefree, happy girl he had fallen in love with anymore. I was scared and on edge, always looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next strange thing to happen. One evening, in the midst of all this turmoil, Curtis suggested we go out to a fireworks show. I wasn't in the mood, feeling too weighed down by the daily stress, but Curtis insisted. "Don't look so down, Leah," he said, trying to lift my spirits. "You'll ruin the fireworks. Cheer up, and you'll feel better." His optimism was infectious, and I decided to go along, if only to try and forget my worries for a while. We found a spot on the grassy hill, surrounded by other couples and families, all waiting for the show to begin. As the first fireworks exploded in the sky, casting colorful patterns above us, I felt a brief sense of relief. For a moment, everything else faded away, and I was just a girl, enjoying a night out with the man she loved. Then, as the fireworks reached their climax, Curtis suddenly grabbed my hand. "Leah, look!" he shouted, pointing up at the sky. I looked up, and my breath caught in my throat. Among the brilliant bursts of light, words began to form. "Leah, will you marry me?" The crowd around us erupted in cheers and murmurs of excitement. I turned to Curtis, who was down on one knee, holding out a ring. "I want you to be happy forever, Leah. Let's always be together," he said. His eyes filled with love and hope. Tears welled up in my eyes as I nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. I had been so consumed by my fears that I hadn't allowed myself to fully appreciate the love and happiness that Curtis brought into my life. This was the moment that should have wiped away all my doubts, the moment that should have marked the beginning of our happily ever after. After our engagement, life seemed to move at lightning speed. Curtis's father, a successful real estate agent, and his family were well off, living in a world of luxury that I was not accustomed to. Curtis, as the vice president of his father's company, was set to inherit the business one day. And now, as his fiancée, I was being ushered into this world, a world that felt both exciting and intimidating. We moved into a luxury apartment owned by his dad while our new house was being built. It was a whirlwind process. The house was completed in just 2 months. It was everything I had ever dreamed of. Spacious, with white walls, and a lovely scent of fresh wood. It felt like the perfect place to start our life together. But as I tried to settle into this new life, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Curtis was busy with work, often coming home late, and I found myself alone in our new home more often than not. I tried to fill the days with decorating and planning for our future, but the sense of unease lingered. It was as if the shadow of those strange phone calls still hung over me, even though they had stopped after our engagement. Just as I was starting to find some peace, Curtis came home one evening with news. "Nicole and Garrett are coming over this Sunday to celebrate our move," he announced casually. Nicole, his sister, had always made me feel a little uncomfortable. She wasn't openly hostile, but there was something about her demeanor that put me on edge. When we announced our engagement, she didn't seem happy, and on our wedding day, she wore a white dress and stayed close to Curtis, drawing attention to herself. Sunday came, and I was in the middle of preparing a homemade pizza when the doorbell rang. I glanced at the clock. Nicole was an hour early. I hurried to the door, wiping my hands on my apron, but before I could reach it, Nicole had already let herself in. She walked past me without so much as a greeting, heading straight for the living room where Curtis was waiting. "Curtis, a housewarming gift!" she exclaimed, handing him a box. She completely ignored my presence as if I wasn't even there. I watched as Curtis opened the box, revealing a glass photo frame. Inside was a picture of Curtis and Nicole. Not us, the newlyweds, but Curtis and his sister. My heart sank. Nicole didn't stop there. She took the frame and replaced our wedding photo with it, placing it prominently on the mantel. I could feel the tension rising within me, but I forced a smile, trying to keep the peace. After all, she was Curtis's sister. I didn't want to cause any friction between us. The day continued in a similar fashion. Nicole dominated the conversation, making everything about her and Curtis. She dragged him upstairs to show her around the house, leaving me alone with Garrett, her husband. Garrett was polite but distant, absorbed in his phone. He barely spoke, and when he did, it was about work. When Curtis and Nicole finally came back downstairs, I was ready to serve the meal I had prepared. But before I could bring out the pizza, Nicole announced, "Oh, I brought some meat. Let's have a barbecue." I was stunned. A barbecue in our new home? The smell would linger in the house for days, and I wasn't prepared for it. But Curtis, always eager to please his sister, agreed without hesitation. "Nicole, that's some quality meat. Let's have a barbecue." I forced another smile, agreeing even though I didn't want to. "Sure, it looks delicious." The barbecue turned into a chaotic event. Nicole took over, pushing aside the pizza I had carefully made to make room for her meat. Curtis's parents arrived, having been invited by Nicole without my knowledge. I was trying to juggle everything, serving drinks, grilling meat, and keeping up appearances, but it was clear that Nicole was running the show. At one point, I managed to serve my pizza to Curtis's parents. My mother-in-law took a bite and smiled. "Leah, this pizza is wonderful," she said, turning to her husband. "Try some, dear," Curtis's father agreed. "This is really good, Leah. You could open a restaurant with pizza like this." Nicole's expression soured, but she forced herself to eat a slice. "It tastes rustic," she commented, clearly unimpressed. Garrett, caught off guard, quickly agreed, trying to avoid any conflict. I felt a small sense of satisfaction seeing Nicole's displeasure, but it didn't last long. She continued to boss me around, asking me to grill more meat, fetch drinks, and clean up after everyone. By the time the barbecue was over, I was exhausted and hadn't even had a chance to eat any of the brisket. When Curtis noticed, he asked, "Didn't we save some meat for Leah?" Nicole shrugged, pretending to be innocent. "Oh, was that for Leah? I grilled it and ate it." I smiled weakly, trying to brush it off. "It's fine. As long as everyone had fun, that's what matters." But inside, I was seething. Nicole's behavior was disrespectful and hurtful. But I didn't want to cause a scene. I kept telling myself that it was just one day, that I could get through it. But as the evening wore on, I found it harder and harder to keep up the facade. After Curtis's parents left, Nicole and Garrett showed no signs of leaving. I was beyond tired, both physically and emotionally. I pulled Curtis aside and told him I wasn't feeling well, hoping he would ask them to leave. Curtis, always understanding, quickly agreed. "Leah's not feeling well," he told Nicole. "We'll have to call it a night." Nicole looked disappointed. "Already? Why don't the three of us go to a club?" But Garrett, noticing how tired I was, intervened. "Let's go home for today, Nicole. We can do it another time." Finally, they left, and I breathed a sigh of relief. But as I was getting ready for bed, a new worry crept into my mind. Curtis and I had talked about Nicole and Garrett's relationship earlier in the evening, and it didn't sit right with me. They didn't act like a couple, and the phone call Garrett had made earlier, the one I overheard, only added to my suspicions. The next day, Curtis suggested we go out for dinner, hoping to cheer me up. I agreed, but I couldn't shake the unease that had settled in my chest. On the way to the restaurant, we stopped at a department store so I could pick up some clothes. As I was about to open my car door, another car pulled in beside me. I froze when I saw who was inside. Garrett was in the driver's seat, and beside him was a woman who wasn't Nicole. They were laughing, clearly enjoying each other's company. I quickly ducked down, hiding behind my car, my heart racing. Was Garrett cheating on Nicole? And if so, why? I waited until they went inside before hurrying into the store. But the encounter had shaken me, and I couldn't focus on shopping. I ended up leaving without buying anything and spent the rest of the day in a daze, trying to make sense of what I had seen. That evening, Curtis and I went to the restaurant as planned, but I could barely eat. My mind was racing, torn between confronting Garrett and keeping what I had seen to myself. Curtis noticed my distraction and asked if I was okay, but I just shrugged it off, telling him I wasn't very hungry. While I was in the restroom, Curtis's phone buzzed on the table. I normally wouldn't snoop, but something compelled me to look at it. The message on the screen made my blood run cold. "Leah is definitely cheating. I saw her with another man. Leah and you are not a good match. Let's all live together again. You are being deceived by Leah." It was from Nicole. My hands shook as I read the message. Nicole was trying to turn Curtis against me, feeding him lies to make him doubt me. I felt a surge of anger like I had never felt before. Nicole had crossed a line, and I couldn't let her get away with it. When Curtis returned to the table, he picked up his phone and read the message. I could see the doubt in his eyes as he looked at me. "Leah, there's something I've been meaning to ask you," he began slowly. "Are you cheating on me? Nicole said she saw you with another man." I stared at him in shock. "No, Curtis, I'm not cheating on you," I insisted, my voice shaking. "I went to the department store today, but I didn't buy anything, that's all." But Curtis wasn't convinced. The seed of doubt had been planted, and no matter what I said, I could see that he didn't fully believe me. The rest of the evening was spent in tense silence, and when we got home, Curtis went straight to bed without saying a word. The next morning, the tension was still there. Curtis barely spoke to me, and I could feel the distance growing between us. It was all Nicole's doing, and I knew I had to do something before it destroyed our marriage. I couldn't stand it anymore. I had to confront Nicole and clear the air. I drove to her apartment, my hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. When I arrived, I rang the doorbell, my heart pounding in my chest. Garrett answered, looking surprised to see me. "Leah, what are you doing here?" he asked, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "I need to talk to Nicole," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "She's not here right now," Garrett replied, hesitating. "But you can come in if you want." I stepped inside and immediately noticed how empty the apartment felt. There were no personal touches, no signs of a woman's presence. It was like a temporary living space, not a home. "Garrett, what's going on?" I asked, unable to keep the suspicion out of my voice. "Why don't you and Nicole live together like a real married couple?" Garrett sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Nicole and I aren't actually married, he admitted, looking embarrassed. We haven't even applied for a marriage license. We're just pretending to be married. I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. But why? Why would you pretend to be married? Garrett looked away, his expression troubled. Nicole and I met online, on a website for people in complicated situations. I have feelings for someone I shouldn't. My sister, our parents started to suspect something, and I needed a cover. Nicole was in a similar situation. So we decided to pretend to be married. It's all a lie. My mind was reeling. So, you're not in love with Nicole? I asked, trying to understand. No, Garrett said quietly, and Nicole doesn't love me either. She's in love with Curtis. My breath caught in my throat. Curtis? But he's her brother. Garrett nodded. I know, but Nicole's feelings for Curtis go beyond brotherly love. She's been trying to break you two up, hoping that Curtis would choose her instead. I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. Nicole's behavior, the strange phone calls, the constant tension, it all made sense now. She had been trying to sabotage my relationship with Curtis from the start, and now she was so desperate that she was lying to Curtis, trying to make him believe I was cheating on him. I couldn't let her get away with it. I had to confront her, to make her see the damage she was causing. I called her and invited her over for dinner, hoping to lure her into a conversation where I could finally expose the truth. When she arrived, she seemed surprised to see me alone. Where's Curtis? She asked, glancing around. He's working late, I lied, keeping my voice calm. But I wanted to talk to you. Nicole raised an eyebrow, sensing something was off. About what? About you and Garrett, I said, watching her closely. Garrett told me everything, Nicole. Your marriage is a sham. You've been trying to break Curtis and me up from the start, haven't you? Nicole's eyes narrowed, and for a moment she looked like she might deny it. But then her expression hardened. So what if I have? She snapped. Curtis is mine. He's always been mine. You're just a distraction. My anger flared, but I forced myself to stay calm. Nicole, this has to stop. You're hurting Curtis, and you're hurting me. You need to let go. Nicole's face twisted with rage. I won't let you take him from me. I've gotten rid of every other girl who tried to come between us, and I'll get rid of you too. Before I could respond, the door to the living room opened, and Curtis stepped inside. He had been listening the entire time. Nicole's face paled as she realized what had just happened. Curtis, she whispered, her voice trembling. You were here? I heard everything, Curtis said, his voice cold. Nicole, I'm done with your games. You've crossed a line. I can't believe you would go this far to hurt Leah. Nicole looked like she was about to cry. Curtis, I'm sorry. I didn't mean— No, Curtis interrupted, shaking his head. It's too late for that. You need to apologize to Leah right now, or I'm done with you. Nicole stared at him in shock, her eyes wide. For a moment, it seemed like she might refuse. But then she looked at me, and something in her expression softened. I'm sorry, Leah, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't mean to hurt you. Curtis stepped forward, putting his arm around me. Nicole, I need you to understand something. Leah and I are starting a family. We're going to have a baby. Nicole's eyes widened in surprise. A baby? You're pregnant? I nodded, tears filling my eyes. Yes, I just found out, and I want you to be a part of our child's life, but only if you can let go of this obsession with Curtis. Nicole looked down, her shoulders slumping. I'm sorry, she repeated, her voice filled with regret. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just wanted Curtis to be happy. And I am happy, Curtis said firmly, but I need you to find your own happiness too, Nicole. You can't live your life trying to control mine. Nicole nodded slowly, wiping away her tears. I'll try. I don't know how, but I'll try. We stood there in silence for a moment. the tension finally beginning to ease. Nicole turned to leave, but before she did, she looked back at me. "Congratulations, Leah. I hope you and Curtis have a beautiful life together." Months passed, and the tension that had once hung over our lives began to lift. Curtis and I focused on preparing for the arrival of our baby, and our relationship grew stronger with each passing day. Nicole kept her distance, but we knew she was trying to move on and find her own path. The day our baby was born was the happiest day of my life. Holding our child in my arms, I felt a sense of peace and contentment that I had never known before. Curtis was by my side, his eyes filled with love and pride. A few weeks after the birth, we received a letter from Nicole. Inside was a simple note of congratulations, along with a photo of Curtis and me smiling together. It was a gesture of acceptance, a sign that Nicole was finally ready to let go of the past and embrace a future where we could all coexist peacefully. As I looked at the photo, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. Despite everything that had happened, we had come out stronger on the other side. I knew that there would still be challenges ahead, but I was ready to face them with Curtis by my side and our beautiful child in our arms. We had been through so much, but in the end, it had all been worth it. We had found our happiness, and I knew that we would cherish it for the rest of our lives. Our family was complete, and I couldn't wait to see what the future held for us. And so, with a heart full of hope and love, I looked forward to the next chapter of our lives, ready to embrace whatever came our way.